Yo, what is good, YouTube? Krishan checking back in with another video. In the first update of the day, you guys are looking at the most recent training footage of Nick Walker, who is looking massive. Now, Nick Walker said his body has been changing, but it has been hard to get the weight to go down. So he actually called his coach down to come take a look at him in person, and they actually switched some things up. Nick Walker said he's currently weighing about 290 pounds. Now, if I remember correctly, Nick Walker was actually 245 at last year's Olympia. I believe 255 at the New York Pro, 250 at the Arnold Classic. The weight was declining, probably coming from the quads. As I mentioned before, Nick Walker suffered a quad injury, either right before the New York Pro or right after. But going into this year's Olympia, I can't imagine Nick will be any less than 260, maybe even 270 plus, because he said the body is changing, but he really isn't losing too much weight on the scale. But it's going to be interesting to see how many improvements Nick Walker has made this offseason, because as you guys know, last season, Nick was one of the most talked about bodybuilders, and he didn't even have an offseason. He was constantly competing non-stop and making improvements. And switching over to Michal Krizo, these are the most recent updates from him. And it's crazy how much we talk about Krizo and how he's going to place at the Olympia, but this guy still isn't even a pro. But as we all know, he won't have any problem getting their pro card. And as far as him winning this year's Prague Pro, I consider Krizo to be a potential top 10 guy at the Olympia. And all of the top 10 guys are already qualified except for Justin Rodriguez. So it wouldn't be too far-fetched to have Krizo as a front runner to win that Prague Pro show. And as I said, we have so many guys already qualified. This is shaking up to be one of the most interesting Mr. Olympia in years, just as far as how many names we have in the show and how deep the lineup is. Adding Krizo to this lineup would just make it even better. But let me know in the comment section below, how do you think Krizo will stack up if he does make it to this year's Olympia? And in the next update of the day, these are the most recent physique updates of James Hollingshead. And in all honesty, I am impressed. This is probably the best I've ever seen James Hollingshead look. An update on James' coaching situation: he isn't working with Patrick anymore. There's no bad blood in between the two. But James is pretty much coaching himself, and he's having JP, Jordan Peters, trained by JP, take a good look at him and, pretty much gauge his physique. But going into this Arnold Classic UK, I'm excited, man. I'm excited. James is looking better than what he was looking last year at this time. But a couple people are worried about, is he going to come in too full? James has been having a lot of cheat meals, maybe even every 3 or 4 days, eating a lot of junk food. His physique seems to be looking better, but some people think it could hurt him in the long run. And switching over to Marc Hector, these are the latest physique updates from him. And going into this Arnold Classic UK, initially I thought it was going to be between Andrew Jake and Martin Fitzwater. But listening around the bodybuilding community, some people have Marc Hector winning this show, some people have James Hollingshead winning this show. I've heard people put Andrew Jake as low as 4th place. But after what we seen in the Texas Pro, I wouldn't count out Andrew Jake. But back to Marc Hector, look at the striations in the chest and the delts, man. This guy looks absolutely insane. And he is going to bring a crazy wow factor to the stage. How do you guys think Marc Hector would do with this show? Can he potentially beat Andrew Jake? And in the next update of the day, this is the most recent update from Charles Griffen. And this is the first pose the judges are going to see as this front relax pose. And I believe Charles is definitely going to stand out in the lineup. And he also recently put up this back double bicep. And honestly, Charles Griffen almost reminds me of a taller William Bonac in this shot, just because of the crazy low lat insertions, the density, even the arms. And as I said, a lot of people aren't talking about Charles Griffen, but I believe he can push into their top 10 this year, maybe even higher. Excited to see this guy. Now switching over to Quinton Eriya, who should be the new Mr. Consistent. Quinton puts out updates pretty much every 2 days, and he always looks better and better. Now, Quinton did say, as I mentioned before, he may not compete in 2023, may compete in 2024. Some say he can't afford to take a year off due to his sponsors, but Quinton seems to be slowly improving. And even from the back, guys, look at this back double bicep. Lat insertion seems to be a lot more clean, a lot more prominent. Quinton definitely did not have this during his last prep. And also just seems to be a lot more confident, even though he wasn't able to get to this year's Olympia. Definitely was able to get his name out there a lot more doing Tampa and Texas. Also just get a lot more exposure and just get used to being on the stage. I'm excited to see Quinton in the future. Now switching over to his HD teammate, actually these are the latest updates of Antoine Vaillant. And since Antoine won Chicago, hasn't been too much talk about him. I'm excited to see him at this year's Olympia. As we all know, there's never an Olympia where everyone is in shape. And Antoine is a guy that seems to come in crazy condition as well as presents a lot of detail. And he could be very dangerous. If a guy like Akeem Williams comes in off, and as we know, when Akeem comes in off, he tends to slip a lot of placings. If Antoine is on, could he beat a guy like Akeem Williams? Now, switching over to Behrooz Tabani, these are the most recent updates from him. Not necessarily the highest quality video, but still want to share it. Now, Behrooz is currently prepping for all the European shows, Prague, Romania, Europa, but he still hasn't got a visa yet. So we're hoping that he does get a visa sometime soon. I would love to see this guy on stage, even more to see him at this year's Olympia. He is the only guy I've seen come close to Heidi Chupin with conditioning, striations, and detail. I believe he's a Persian guy as well, but don't quote me on that. Now, this isn't a recent update, but I still wanted to share this, just a legendary photo. I believe this is at the gym in Dubai. Just Sergio Jr. hitting the victory pose in front of his father, Sergio Sr., and also a picture of Sergio hitting the most muscular is up on the wall as well, which I thought was interesting. Now, switching over to Classic Physique, these are the latest updates of Peter Molnar, who is 2 weeks out of the Arnold Classic UK. And I actually did not know he was doing this show. For some reason, this show really hasn't been promoted much. Hasn't really been too many competitors lists floating around. And Peter actually placed 6th at this year's Arnold Classic right behind Michael the Bull. And I was always wondering why he wasn't placing higher in the division. I always thought his physique was incredible. But I honestly think he's very similar to Breon Ainsley. Both have great backs, great conditioning, great arms. Also, both are very good posers, but they don't have the quads. Classic Physique is really seeming to put an emphasis on the size and development of the quads. Now, if Peter Molnar was competing at the NPC in 2012, that would be a completely different story. And in the next update of the day, these are the most recent updates of Currey, who was the winner of this year's New York Pro in the Classic Physique division. Now, Neil was actually working with Milo Sarchev prior, but he is now working with Ben Chow. I'm excited to see this guy at this year's Olympia. As I mentioned in my last video, he really wants to place top 10. But the Classic Physique division is arguably more competitive than the men's open division, just because there's so many guys already qualified. Now, ending this video here in my archive of the day, you guys let me know in the comment section below which legendary bodybuilder is this. As always, I hope you guys did indeed enjoy this video. If you haven't done so already, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. I'm Griffen from GOAT Fitness, and that's it. I'm out.